We are live. Hello, everyone. Good day. Welcome to the Just Us Coordinating Council Speaker Series. My name is Melanie Robledo, and I'm a Senior Program Manager at Impact Justice in our Housing Lab. I'm also someone living with the impact of the criminal legal system and an active member of the Just Us Coordinating Council. I have learned firsthand from these webinars about the power of policy advocacy to create opportunity, and I'm honored to be here with you all today as moderator for a topic that is close to my heart and essential to successful reintegration: housing. I'm going to give it a few more minutes because it looks like I rolled right into the intro, and I just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to join, and then I'll continue. Looks like we already have some comments. That was quick. Good day, good afternoon, everyone. All right, looks like we've got some movement in the chat, so I'm going to continue. For those of you who just missed me speaking, my name is Melanie Robledo. I'm a Senior Program Manager at Impact Justice on the Housing Lab. I'm also someone who shares experience with the criminal justice system. And today we're going to move right into what the JCC is. The JCC, as many of you who may know, it's the first of its kind national policy table created by and for individuals impacted by the criminal legal system. Over the course of the last 2.5 years, a table has been built that is dedicated to advancing economic justice where everyone is welcome and all who are invited have a seat. This is a table where collectively we can leverage our lived experience as the expertise that it is. Today's speaker series features national, regional, and local housing solutions, all aimed at creating a place to call home for those returning from incarceration. At a time when housing instability is being rapidly criminalized across this country, it is more urgent than ever that those closest to the problem of housing instability during reentry are actively involved in creating solutions. Before we dive into today's session, I just wanted to take a moment to orient those of you joining to us today to exactly why the JCC is truly a first of its kind approach to policy. In April 2023, the Just Us Coordinating Council, also known as the JCC, was launched, a national collective led by system-impacted leaders, community members, and national organizations who no longer demand a seat at the table, but are instead building our own. Next slide. Next slide. To adequately start addressing the harms caused by the criminal legal system, the JCC works to create pathways, access, and resources within each of these policy areas: collateral sanctions, health and well-being, employment, sentencing and reentry, and of course, housing. Next slide. Housing is more than a place to stay. It is the foundation for everything else, including economic mobility. Our mission is to enhance quality of life for justice impacted individuals and their communities in order to restore human dignity. Next slide. Today's session centers on those most impacted as we highlight new policies and resources, explore advocacy opportunities, and connect with policymakers and advocates advancing change. Next slide, please. As we think about building pathways and the role that housing plays in reintegration, I want to take a moment to connect this national policy work to the on-the-ground innovations already showing what's possible. Next slide. My work at Impact Justice sits right at that intersection, translating vision into practice. Impact Justice is a national research and innovation center that imagines, builds, and scales solutions advancing safety, justice, and opportunity through boundary-breaking programs. We leverage research and other knowledge to turn the desire for change into informed action and to shift the narrative so that decision makers and the public understand what is at stake and what is possible. We have staff all across the country and offices in Los Angeles, Oakland, and Washington, D.C. Our work really fits into 3 buckets. First, we work to prevent people from falling into the criminal justice system in the first place. Second, we improve conditions for those that are currently incarcerated. And third, we build pathways for success after incarceration, ensuring that people have what they need to truly rebuild their lives. The Housing Lab is sewn into that third bucket. It's where I lead a team focused on addressing the barriers we've already been talking about, particularly the lack of safe, stable, and dignified housing. Next slide. Our work includes what we call our Sweetheart Housing Model, the Homecoming Project. It leverages the shared economy for social good, tapping into an untapped resource of 113 million spare bedrooms across the United States. By connecting homeowners and renters with people returning from incarceration, we provide 6 months of stable housing, a stipend for hosts of up to $1,550 a month, and wraparound support for participants. The result is a model that humanizes reentry and redefines what it means to come home. Now, it's one thing to talk about innovation, it's another to feel its impact. So let's take a few minutes to see the Homecoming Project through the eyes of people living it. Can we play the video, please?
You go in and you're being treated, like you're subhuman. Places like the Homecoming Project make it a lot easier to be accepted more into the community. And people with that mindset and that caring makes a big difference. Well, I really enjoy being home. Being formerly incarcerated, that stability has been very instrumental. Knowing that you're in a stable, secure place. So when you're out there trying to find a job, when you're trying to establish your credit, and not having to worry about, well, where am I going to be sleeping tonight?
The Bay Area is home for me because of my family. I have a partner, Joe. We've been together for about 12 years. We had our first participant in October 2018. It was a learning experience, I think, for both of us. We were coming from really different backgrounds, but we just had a really natural friendship. I went with Jason to buy his first car with him, did the paperwork together, going to a restaurant, reading a menu. Scott's our 4th participant.
I have 2 grown daughters, 9 grandchildren, love them dearly. Previously, to have any time with them, I was having to drive over 6.5 hours. One of the obstacles that I was coming up against is I would have to transfer my parole. I needed to have a residence. Impact Justice explained to me how the program worked and that they had a couple that we might be compatible. And when all was said and done, I think we were both pretty much in agreement that we wanted to do this, and it's been very positive.
The Homecoming Project is really necessary in the Bay Area just because the housing prices are so high. It's really hard for people who are just starting off fresh to be able to even survive, let alone thrive.
Right.
For us on the host side, it's really helpful to have, the extra income. I felt the roommates are so well vetted. I felt like it was actually a really safe way to make use of the space that we had.
There are thousands and thousands of people across the country who are being released from prison every year, but we don't invest in them, we don't give them resources, and we don't give them a safe, healthy place to live when they come out. And so the Homecoming Project says there are extra bedrooms in communities that are underserved by the sharing economy. So let's push back against gentrification, pay homeowners to become hosts, to take people who have been in prison, live with them for 6 months. Enterprise and Wells Fargo created the Breakthrough Challenge to invest in innovative housing solutions. So that took us on a journey to explore housing for people leaving prison. We thought we were building a housing project, we built a relationship project. To see people laugh together, eat together, navigate our lives together.
I'm not a housing expert, I'm just a regular person, and we can all do something. It's just part of my responsibility as a community member to make sure that people in our community have a safe place to live.
The goal was to have that stability so I can work on the other pieces of that puzzle. And the Homecoming Project and Joe and Tamika were able to fulfill that for me and really
make that a lot easier.
This has just added such a richness to my life and is just something I really cherish.
That video never gets old for me. It's really what brought me here to Impact Justice. For those of you who might share some similar sentiments, every time that I got released from incarceration, as I was cycling in and out, I kept hearing this phrase of return home. 650,000 individuals return home from prison each year, and it didn't quite sit well with me. I kept wondering how I was experiencing housing instability and how there were these organizations that were trying to provide me housing, but yet we kept saying that I had returned home. And so, some of the narrative that Impact Justice uses is that they put the word home into homecoming. And so I hope that you all got to see why this program is so near and dear to my heart. Next slide, please. Since launching, the Homecoming Project has now placed more than 200 participants in welcoming homes across the Bay and Los Angeles. And here's what success looks like. For those individuals that have completed our program, 0% of participants have returned to prison. 98% are working, studying, or both, and 100% leave the program with housing. I mean, that is just life-changing. It's so impactful. And so what are we up to now? Our research team is now studying the long-term outcomes to understand how stability sustains beyond the program. Next slide. All right, so now I've got some work for all of you. Where do we go from here? Across the country, we know that there's no single pathway home, but there are shared values that we can build from. And at Impact Justice, our housing lab exists to equip the communities with the tools to design housing models that not just move with people, or that move with people, not against them. For some of you, that might mean bringing the Homecoming Project to your own backyard. For others, it might look like translating our learnings into your local context through technical assistance, strategic planning, or even a short-term peer learning cohort. Whatever form it takes, we want to be your thought partners. If you're a policymaker, a funder, or a community leader interested in exploring this work, or if you know who we should be talking to, please reach out to us. You can connect directly at homecomingproject@impactjustice.org or across all social media platforms at Impact Justice. Thank you, Zach. Absolutely. If you have any questions, happy to circle back to them when we have time, or happy to circle back to them post this session. All right, I think we're doing well on time. It looks like we're actually pretty ahead of time. Thumbs up, yes? All right. Thank you so much for giving me the time to share about the work that I'm so passionate about here at Impact Justice. I would now like to welcome two of my colleagues from the Corporation for Supportive Housing, Kanani Medeiros and Terry Power. CSH is a national nonprofit intermediary and community development financial institution, also known as a CDFI, with dedicated staff across more than 30 U.S. states and territories. They work to ensure that every individual has a safe, stable place to call home and that all communities have the opportunity to thrive. Kanani and Terry, thank you so much for joining us today to share more about your policy and advocacy around supportive housing and the important role it plays in reentry. We look forward to learning from you both. Now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Melanie. Aloha and welcome, everyone. We are happy to be joining you for today's Just U.S. Coordinating Council Speaker Series. Today, we'll be sharing a little bit about our organization, some of the work we've done in the reentry justice space over the years, a brief overview of supportive housing to set the framework, and our current justice system priorities, particularly around our key reentry initiatives. And I also just want to flag that we'll be referencing various resources and links throughout today's presentation that will be shared with everyone post-webinar. Next slide. For those unfamiliar with the Corporation for Supportive Housing, more often referred to as CSH, we are a national nonprofit intermediary organization in CDFI that advances supportive housing as an approach to help people thrive. And we do this through various lines of business, such as training and technical assistance. We do a lot of trainings, a lot of webinars, a lot of TA. We do lending and investment, policy and advocacy, particularly around housing, services, and economic security, which is a new focus of our strategic plan. And through CSH's signature initiatives like our justice and carceral systems work that you'll hear more about today. Next slide. So my name is Kanani Medeiros, and I'm the Associate Director of Justice Systems Transformation at CSH. I lead CSH's National Justice Portfolio, and I work on our National Strategy and External Affairs team. And I'm based in the California Bay Area. A big part of my work is focused on eliminating and reducing housing access barriers for people with justice system involvement through state and federal advocacy, policy, and systems change interventions. My work also includes scaling CSH's key justice initiatives and working with teams across the country and advancing other areas of our justice portfolio. And I've been with CSH for a little over 3 years. So I'll go ahead and pass it on to my colleague, Terry, to introduce herself.
Thanks, Kanani. Yeah, I'm Terry Power. I'm Associate Director of the Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee offices at CSH. In December, I will be at CSH for 13 years. Hard to believe. I do run the Returning Home Ohio program, and I'm really excited to talk to you all about it today. I see there are some people from Ohio, so welcome, but it's really exciting to see people from all over the country here to hear about reentry and housing. I am a licensed independent social worker, and I bring that expertise to CSH as well. And so I do some training for CSH in addition to running the Returning Home Ohio program. We also have a local fuse program, which I'm going to talk about for just a minute or two during my slide presentation. And we also, you will also hear about our other reentry housing program, Community Transition. So glad to be here.
Thank you. Next slide. So CSH has been invested in reentry for more than 2 decades. It's partially driven because when we look at our need for supportive housing nationally, about a quarter of the unmet national supportive housing need are for people with justice system involvement, particularly people exiting jail and prisons, and a larger number if you consider all the people out in the community with records. So we started this work with a FUSE initiative, which stands for Frequently Used Systems Engagement, although I know it's had several other names over the years. And as Terry mentioned, she'll briefly talk about it later, so I won't go into FUSE at this time. Our work around reentry also started with some investments in New York City over 20 years ago, and with projects like St. Leonard's House in Chicago, which was one of the early reentry prison projects that was set up to catch people leaving the prison system and help them move into supportive housing. Castle Gardens, also known as the Castle in New York City, which is a reentry affordable and supportive housing building, which was another one of our first investments for CSH that we made in supportive housing as a lender, as part of our lines of business, which I was also able to visit several years ago. Historically, and for good reason, people have complained a lot about the barriers to assessing homeless resources for people with justice backgrounds, particularly around the 180-day cap when determining whether someone exiting incarceration could be considered homeless. The 180-day cap under HUD's previous guidance from many years back. So the reason today it is now 90 days from 180 is because CSH did advocacy directly with HUD, leveraging data from our FUSE initiative in New York, showing the impact that the arbitrary number of 180 days had on this population. There were some other partners as well that supported this effort. We also asked HUD at the time to reduce it to 30 days, but 90 days is where they eventually met us. We've done and continue to do work around the decriminalization of homelessness, along with our national partners. Fair Chance Housing Laws, our team in New York, helped support the efforts to get the New York City law passed. I'm particularly interested in seeing if there are other states where we can advance fair chance in housing laws. So during my 3 years at CSH, my focus up until last year or so has been on increasing access to housing for people with justice system involvement in collaboration with our national partners. This work has included advocacy with HUD around the big rule, criminal background screening, which would have hopefully created new rules and guidance that were more aligned with our goals in reducing barriers to housing for this population. advocacy with the Federal Trade Commission around hidden and deceptive fees, junk fees related to housing, particularly application fees, background screening fees, and others. Work with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau around third-party screening company practices. Unfortunately, none of this work ended up moving forward under the previous administration, although advocates did a hard push at the end to get the new rules released prior to the change in administrations. And at the federal level, and with all the current challenges of doing anything productive in this political climate, we've shifted our focus to other areas of our justice work, like advancing our work around replicating one of our key justice initiatives, Returning Home Ohio, which we are really excited to share more about in a moment. However, before you hear about that work, I wanted to say that there are still opportunities to have an impact at the state level. We've done work in Virginia in creating a model tenant selection template for housing providers, property managers, HFAs, housing finance agencies, as another strategy and approach in reducing housing barriers for people with justice system involvement. And we can share the model TSP template and related resources with everyone as well post discussion. And just wanted to flag, in Indiana, their Housing and Community Development Authority utilized our resources in reducing housing barriers as part of some of their programs. And also quickly, as our partners at the Vera Institute of Justice are doing they're doing barrier reduction work at the state level with local HFAs, and they recently sent out an RFP around an opportunity for local HFAs to receive TA, which would include working with local communities like some of you. They have also have a webinar to learn more about this opportunity on November 5th. So we'll include this opportunity and how to register in our follow-up as well. So now, before I pass it on to Terry to discuss our reentry work, I would be remiss not to mention a pressing matter happening that will have an impact on communities nationwide. Next slide. Programs that help individuals and families move from homelessness to stability. HUD procures all the resources related to homelessness that pass through the federal government, typically annually. And last year, they made it biannually because Congress recognized how hard it is to do the application process annually. And the funding goes to and is managed by state and local community continuums of care every year. And so they made 2-year awards last year that were supposed to run one more year, but the Trump administration decided to call it back and change priorities, which may or may not be allowable in the statute. And we are worried and understand that this new NOFO may do several things. One, it may limit the amount of resources that can be spent on supportive and rapid rehousing. The average right now is about 55% nationally that goes to this resource, in some jurisdictions upwards of 90%, so heavily relied on. And this change would cap it at 30%. And that by itself could eliminate $1.5 billion of federal funding shifted away from these housing resources, with the goal of creating more emergency resources in institutional beds like shelters. And 2, it would make communities compete more than they have to for resources that match the administration's priorities. These 2 things together could result in up to $2.5 billion in funding shifts out of the $3.6 billion total to the COC grants provided. It could create big problems for supportive housing providers, COCs, 170,000 tenants. People who live with these resources in rapid rehousing and supportive housing could potentially lose their housing. It could include things like you have to agree to enforce immigration laws, not look at sex other than male and female, and other related pieces aligned with the administration's priorities. This would present problems for providers. For example, a provider that is focused on LGBTQ housing, housing for people who have been incarcerated. And even if they change their grant focus, could lose a grant to pass focus areas that are not aligned with the current administration, so they can look backwards to see what the kind of work you've done before. What we are doing is raising awareness so that people understand the significant impact that it can destabilize local housing markets, could drive projects out of business, put people out on the streets, and it's going to invest in things that don't work, like more shelter beds, people cycling in and out of prisons because they have nowhere else to go and no way to break the cycle. So we're doing work with groups across the country to speak up and protect this funding. We're sharing tools and helping people take action. A post follow-up, we'll share an activation guide, a media guide with everyone today. And please reach out to us if you want to learn more on how to take action. So next slide, and I'll pass it on to Terry.
All right. Thanks, Kanani. I'm assuming everyone can hear me okay. Yep, great. So as you've been hearing about the housing challenges for the reentry population, and Melanie, that video was amazing, and so excited to see it. As Kanani mentioned, we are also going really aggressively CSH for returning home replication, and you'll see in the last slide a documentary that was created to help states understand the importance of housing. And those clients said it beautifully. When you don't have to worry about where you're going to put your head or where you're going to sleep that night, you can focus on other things, including recovery and successful reintegration. And that's what we see in returning home as well. So we all know the challenges for the reentry population. We know that black cloud hangs over their heads and doesn't go away, unfortunately. And when they don't have assistance with those challenges, it's very, very easy to go back to the life that they knew, and that creates that cycle. However, if they do have those resources and they do get help with those challenges, then they're offered a different way and they're more likely to be successful. Next slide. So we do this at CSH and returning home through supportive housing. And supportive housing really does increase successful reentry. And I'm going to explain what that is and how it works. But briefly, I want to let you know that it is successful and it does all of these things that you see on the slide. And it's a win-win for everyone. It reduces cost, it increases public safety, it decreases homelessness, it decreases recidivism. Of course, it's the right thing to do. But in addition to all of that, it really is a win-win, and everyone should come together to make sure that this happens. Next slide. So what is supportive housing? Supportive housing is the non-time limited rental subsidy with services. So Melanie offered a different housing model, which was the shared housing, and it gave people certainly that start that they need. With returning home, it is non-time limited. Everyone has their own time for recovery. Not everyone takes 6 months or 2 years. We've had some people in our program for 3, 4, and 5 years before they're able to move on. And it really does depend. It depends on how long they've been in prison, their mental health capacity, any other disabilities they may have, the resources that they have available, their natural resources that they have available or not. So everyone is given the opportunity to work and move forward at their own pace. But I will also say, in returning home, our average length of stay is really just over 2 years. And I always add that because sometimes the people feel like, oh my gosh, I want free rent forever. That sounds great. But people do move on, and they do want to move on. They want to become, productive members of society. And when they're given that chance, they do it. When people get income, they do pay 30% of their rent, of their income, not of the rent, of their income toward rent. And that is another supportive housing model and component of that. So they do contribute to rent and or utilities when they get some income. And I also do want to point out that it isn't just housing. Supportive housing is housing plus services. And you're going to hear a little bit about how we do that with returning home. Next slide. Thank you. So we have 2 statewide reentry programs in Ohio. We're very proud of it. And I did see somebody from the Ohio Department of Rehab and Corrections on the participant list. So welcome. We love your partnership. What happens is the returning home program has been going on since 2007. From 2007 to 2012, it was a pilot. And for anybody on this call who is not from Ohio, who is thinking about partnering with your Department of Corrections or other state departments, or thinking about replicating returning home. Starting with a pilot is a good idea. In 2007, this was a totally new idea for CSH as well as everyone else. We'd never used supportive housing as a platform to assist people leaving incarceration. So the pilot was really a great negotiation and compromise between ODRCs, which is our Department of Corrections, and CSH. We studied it for 5 years, the Urban Institute out of Washington, D.C., with a comparison group and a treatment group. And at the end of those 5 years, they found that the people in returning home were 60% less likely to recidivate, 40% less likely to be rearrested, and had almost 300% more services as measured through behavioral health Medicaid billings. So there's that importance of those services, those wraparound services for individuals. We do have a dedicated case manager to, again, the importance of that supportive services. I will say that the best model for returning home or community transition is if you had staffing, separate staffing, one that does concentrate on finding landlords and negotiating with landlords and dealing with the lease and inspections, because that's their specialty. And then case managers can focus on case management, seeing clients, doing what they do well. When agencies don't have the ability to do that, because it is a more expensive model, the case manager then has to do both, has to negotiate with landlords and do case management. When possible, the supervisor can step into that position and do those and help with those inspections and landlord negotiation and leases. The community transition program was modeled after returning home. It was started in 2017. Returning home works with individuals with a severe and persistent mental illness, and community transition program focuses on those individuals with a substance use disorder. And in addition, they had to have had at least one recovery service while in prison. So they had to go to a group or counseling session, at least one recovery service while they've been in prison. That's the eligibility criteria for community transition. Also, community transition has a rapid rehousing component to it. So if someone score, they do a justice vulnerability assessment, and if they score in a certain area, then they're deemed to be able to need a shorter time in housing. That's the rapid rehousing component. With returning home, it's only supportive housing, so it's only that non-time limited. Very quickly about Fuse, we do help with Fuse across the country, as Kanani said. Here in Columbus, Ohio, we do have a Fuse program that is for people who are cycling out of local jail. So Fuse deals with people who are frequent users of the jail population, and then our two statewide programs work with individuals from prison. And each community with Fuse will identify and define their frequent users depending on their community, the size of their community, their size of their jails, what's important to them. Many times, Fuse is also a system-wide collaboration where they have people cycling in and out of shelter and hospitals and jail. So you get that system collaboration with many Fuse programs. Okay, next slide. So some important considerations if you are thinking about it. Collaboration is the key. We work way better together than we do alone. We know this, and it's important. People are whole, comprehensive people, so we need to make sure that we are collaborating. If you are talking about to other people in different fields, I will say it's important to make sure that you don't use your jargon, that you make sure everyone understands what you're saying, because we all have the jargon in our fields. So we need to make sure that that doesn't happen, and we define what we are saying. Next slide. the important thing I think that's made returning home so important and so successful is the standardization. So the Department of Corrections pays CSH, and we then monitor. So we make sure that everything is done consistently, that everyone has the right same training. We also monitor, we do site visits, we interview clients, and we also do in-reach to prison staff to make sure they understand the program and actually make referrals. Without referrals, you don't have a program. Next slide. In terms of the cost, of course, it's much cheaper than a day in jail, and you have these costs here. I'm going to go by this because we're running out of time. Next slide. These next two slides really talk about the importance of the recidivism, our outcomes. So in that 12-month period for returning home, we had 10 people exit to prison, which is a 4% recidivism rate, and then 5 people to jail, which is a 2% recidivism rate. Okay, I believe Kanani is next.
Thank you, Terry.
Yeah.
In the last 2 years or so, CSH has gained some momentum in exploring replication opportunities beyond Ohio, and much of this work has been internal facing for the most part, including having staff spend time on the ground in Ohio to learn more about the program, myself included. I was just there a few weeks ago. Securing buy-in from senior staff, having staff capacity and resources to carry out the work, making some initial investments in developing internal resources and assets to support our replication efforts. I'm going to skip over some things so I can get to more of the meatier stuff. We really see this work as a multi-year effort to lay the groundwork, launch a pilot, codify through policy or a budget amendment, and expand to a full operational program with dedicated funding and supports. The regions that we are currently doing work in beyond Ohio are California, Illinois, and Nevada. And since the launch of our documentary, we've received interest from more than a handful of additional states on replication, and have also have additional states on our radar that we are considering proactively reaching out to. A lot of exciting work for us. I won't be able to give a deeper update on our individual replications efforts for the sake of time, but do want to briefly mention that we are moving forward with a pilot in Illinois. We've identified an administrator, and I think we've signed a contract over there. There's some, I can't, maybe in the follow-up, we can do an update with the California and Nevada work. But a lot of exciting work and moving pieces in those states as well. Next slide, please. So as we've mentioned, returning home Ohio replication is a big priority for CSH at the moment, and we're hoping to work with external partners in advancing other returning home programs across the country. So reach out to us if you want to learn more about and explore opportunities to collaborate. You can reach us through our replication email up top or via our individual emails. And don't forget to check out our Returning Home Ohio short 28-minute documentary, which we'll also link to with our follow-up as well. So that wraps up our portion of today's presentation. Thank you all.
Wow. Kanani, Terry, you guys are doing some incredible work. I got the first chance to look at some of the resources that you all plan on sharing at the end of this session, and I encourage everyone to check them out, follow the incredible work that they're doing, and learn more and learn how, again, you might bring it to your own backyard. I'm going to now transition over to our next presenter. For nearly a decade, Central and Southern Arizonans have been served at their most vulnerable moments by a combined approach of for-profit and nonprofit organizations, founded and led by individuals impacted by the criminal legal system. The Howe Project and the Ernest House, both founded and led by JCC member Danny Howe, have prevented tens of thousands of nights of homelessness across Arizona and provide key basic human needs in tandem with housing. The goal is to strengthen our neighborhoods, bring safety to our streets, and break cycles of generational poverty for Arizonans' most underserved families. We are pleased to be joined today by Danny to share more about the design and implementation of this impactful approach to transitional housing. Thank you for being with us here, Danny. Take it away.
Yes, thank you guys very much for having me. Grateful to be here. Like they mentioned, my name is Danny Howe, here out of Tucson, Arizona. The Earnest House is a passion project that my wife and I started about 16 years ago, or actually 2016. Sorry about that. So it's just a community-driven model supporting reentry and recovery. So it's just, something that is near and dear to us. I am a Just Community member, Justice Leadership cohort from 2020. So again, grateful to be here. Roll slide, please. So why we started, that is a little convoluted there, but so why we started, so we saw a gap for existing incarceration with limited housing options, right? So we built a program that we wish we had growing up. So I had justice involvement early on when I was a youngster, starting at age 9, 15, 17, and then I went to prison at 18 years old. And if you always do what you always done, you'll always be where you've always been, right? So growing up, some of my best clients when I was making poor choices in drug sales was my family. So when I got released from incarceration and went back to that same environment, it was the same situation, right? So rooted in dignity, accountability, and second chances is kind of our model and why we opened our homes. Next slide. So what is the Earnest House? The Earnest House, we're a transitional housing program for men and women suffering homelessness, substance abuse issues, and reentering the incarceration after incarceration. So we focus on employment, recovery, and accountability. Actually, we have a 3-tier model. So we really focus on housing, employment, and transportation. We feel with those 3 things, you have a better shot at success. So we are a self-sustaining client pay model. So we do charge. It's about $21.50 a day. And that promotes responsibility, independence, and dignity. And we've actually, since we started in 2016, we've eliminated over 90,000 nights of homelessness in Tucson with this model. Next slide. So our beginning. So what I want to do is give you guys just a couple little tidbits on how we got started. And then at the end, I'm going to give some contact information if you'd like to discuss anything further. So we opened our first home here in Tucson, didn't have any money, right? So what we did is we rented. We rented a house, and then we started working on filling it, right? So I worked with the community members. And back in 2016, it cost us about $6,000 for the first and last month's rent, the furniture, and any utilities. So we estimate that now today is going to be anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000 to launch a new home. But it really, I was just in Jersey and they were talking about housing prices being pretty expensive. And the options are to be able to go into some of the vacant buildings and take over those and kind of run the programs out of facilities like that is an option as well. So we started as a for-profit in this nonprofit landscape to avoid mission drift, right? So I've worked for many nonprofits. After funding changes, we saw how people's models have changed. We wanted to stay true to why we started our houses. And over the last 9 years, we've been able to do that with that client pay model. We've also noticed that the residents have some skin in the game and tend to take their housing a lot more serious throughout that process. Now, what we do is we've gotten a pretty good name for ourselves here in the community. So there are organizations that will prepay beds for us so that their clients have access to our program because we don't, we're pretty limited. And I haven't marketed since we started our houses in 2016, and we've been consistently full ever since. We are approved by the Department of Corrections, and we do get individuals from probation and parole, but we also just have a good, footprint here in the community, and we get a lot of referrals of word of mouth, right? So the prepay option is a good resource for the organizations, but for us, we don't rely on that because if they don't pay, then we'll just fill that bed with a client, that is ready in their journey. So finding the right house, the landlord, and the neighborhood is key, right? You want to talk to the landlord. You want somebody who's going to understand what you have going on, is going to be able to be flexible with you, work with you. And then the neighborhood, again, is key. If they don't want you in that neighborhood, they're going to do everything they can to get you out. So we really want to respect our community and the neighbors that are around us. Roll slide, please. So our vision. So we operate agnostically. So what that means is basically we allow our residents to choose the recovery path that best fits them meeting people where they are, right? So we expect our residents and staff alike to approach recovery with earnest. Again, my name is Danny Howe. Earnest just means with sincerity. So we want our folks to be showing that genuine effort, accountability, and the will to rebuild their lives, right? Next slide. So our team model, this is its key for us, is that all of our staff have lived experience. This builds instant trust and relatability with our residents. Again, people don't care what you think unless they think that you care, right? So having somebody that's walked through the program, that understands it, that has been huge for us, right? We do promote from within. So clients who thrive become managers. When they become staff of ours, we do give them a stipend, and then they don't have to pay for their own housing. The idea of this is that they come to us, they're able to start getting their feet under themselves, then they start getting a job. We take them on as staff. That way they save that little bit of money before they get into their own place. We view employment at the Earnest House as a step in recovery, not that end point. Our focus is we really help individuals throughout the community with employment. And we want to get them competitively employed, right? Gainfully employed. We don't want them to just have these entry-level type positions. So we work with Department of Defense organizations around town. We work with hospitality, restaurants, and warehouse and construction and all that stuff. But we also help with getting their fingerprint clearance card, their rights restored, and just a whole lot of stuff just to really eliminate any barriers that they had. So when staff move on to better opportunities, we celebrate that. This individual here, her name is Jenny. She was with us for almost a year and a half. She did really well on our properties. This is her. She got a great job, started getting back with her family. She got her custody of her kids back. And then this is her purchasing her first vehicle, which was pretty exciting for her. Next slide. So partnerships that matter. So again, employer partnerships are essential. So everyone in our homes must work. Now, if they're in a housing, like an employment program, that's something that we consider as work. So as long as we work with an organization here where they're able to get their culinary certification, that's about an 8-week program. We also work with them getting their CDLs for truck driving. Again, that's a pretty lengthy program, so we work with them while they're in that program. Employment that builds confidence and self-worth and stability. One of my jobs actually is I work here in the state of Arizona for Arizona at Work. My job is to go into the prisons, the federal prisons, state prisons, probation and parole offices. So again, to be able to, and working for the state, I work for the governor here of Arizona. So to be able to push that people like her are hiring individuals like me really opens up opportunities for folks. So we do maintain local business partnerships to ensure residents can pay their fees and rebuild independence. Now, another thing that we've been able to do throughout this process has been able to, I don't know where I was going with that. We can go to the next slide. So our impact. So 10 years of service and thousands of individuals. Again, we've done this, actually next year will be our 10-year anniversary. And we've eliminated, like I said, about 90 to 95,000 nights of homelessness back here in our community. My wife likes to say that we provided over 95,000 nights of safety in our community, which encourages more folks to get into this field of work and to help this need that is huge here and across the country. And countless lives have changed. So when we say countless clients' lives have changed, it's not just the clients that we work with. We're able to connect them with their families, friends, and our community members, which is making a safe environment for everybody. Roll slide. So some of our best practices. Again, this is just some tips and pointers for those that are interested in possibly starting something similar. So we do, again, hire staff with lived experience, right? As Just Leadership USA focuses on, those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, right? So we really want individuals that have been impacted on one of those levels, whether it be substance abuse, homelessness, or reentry, to be in these positions to help guide our clients through that process. Most importantly, you need to be willing to roll up your sleeves, right? Starting a business like this isn't something you can just say, hey, I'm going to start a house, I'm going to fill it with some folks, and then just let it run on its own. Oftentimes, like I said, I flew in last night at 9:30 from New York. I had to stop at the houses, take care of some stuff right before I headed home, right? There's always something that we're going to need. And while I was out of town, I'm on the phone half the time helping them with different situations. Leave the judgment at the door. That's going to be crucial. We do work with a lot of people with physical, mental disabilities, behavioral health issues, and coming with backgrounds from all walks of life, right? So we definitely do not judge, and we try to meet people, most importantly, where they're at. The client pay model builds respects and helps promote shared ownership. So I think when we said, where I got lost off track last time was talking about the client pay model, right? We recognize that this is an issue. So we wanted to be able to make sure that we had options for folks that are coming out and they can get employment, right? So early on, I saw that there was that gap. So my wife and I started actually a kettle corn business, which was an opportunity to help folks kind of get some employment in the meantime. We started that about 6 years ago, which has turned into that kettle corn makes more than my wife does as a teacher. So it's a way to get the folks out in the community, but also support them financially in that process. Now, trust your team is also going to be a crucial point that I wanted to touch base on. So management and staff alignment is going to be critical, right? Something I learned through Just Leadership USA was being able to hire people and put them in positions and let them take ownership of that role, right? I support them 100%. But at the end of the day, I let them take ownership. It's their property. They're my eyes and ears while on property. But I definitely tell them to put everything on me, right? I'm the owner of the program. So I just want to make sure that I support them. But you have to trust your team and give them some ownership of the programs that they're running. And again, I wanted to talk about work closely with your neighbors and your landlords. For us, anytime there's been a concern or an issue, which has been, right, one of the barriers is when we just go to open a home and some of the neighbors are like, you're going to put who in that house in the neighborhood? And I say, hey, I understand your concern. However, they're getting released and they're going to be living there anyway. With us, they have the support, they have curfews, they have chores that they need to do around property. So one of our first homes, after that year, they're like, oh my gosh, we love having you guys here. It's quiet. You guys clean up everything. So started building that trust within the neighbors in our community. Next slide. So when starting your own program, if this is something you want to do, lead with purpose, be in it for the right reasons, build genuine partnerships, and stay grounded in your mission, even when finances or circumstances get tough. I can tell you that that's happened often. But again, we don't go after grants or government funds. We do have a nonprofit now. We started that a little over 3 years ago. And it was a way to be able to get some donations, which we do take, and that is very useful. But they don't necessarily dictate on how we spend those funds. They just want updates on any results that we have. So when I say be in it for the right reasons, a lot of people get into this and think that they're going to make a ton of money. I can tell you that is not accurate. But what we do get to do is make a difference in our community and in the lives that we're working with. So things do get tough. There's been times where I wanted to throw in the hat. But I can tell you that right as you're starting to hit that end point, something breaks through and just keeps us going, which has been an amazing journey for us. And expect the journey. Success takes patience, sustainability, trust, and community impact grow over time when people remain in focus. So we say it's about direction, not perfection, as long as we're able to pivot when needed and to be able to address any needs and barriers at that time. Next slide. So again, that's just a little bit nuts and bolts on how we operate here out of the Ernest House here in Tucson, Arizona. I would love to connect with anyone that is interested on learning how to start or replicate this model, because when people are met with opportunity and belief, they rise, right? And I've been able to witness that. We actually just got awarded from Pima County for for the Best Community Impact Award, which is pretty amazing. They're going to acknowledge us on December 2nd in front of the community, which will be great. So again, what we've been doing has been getting some recognition, which is great. And hopefully more people can step up. I have no problem sharing any of my expertise on this because we just cannot have enough of what we do here in Tucson. So next slide. So that's my contact information. If you guys have any questions, I would love to talk to you. And again, thank you guys for the opportunity.
Wow. Congratulations, Danny. I share those sentiments. What a huge honor. Again, you're also doing some incredible work. We really appreciate your time and your expertise on this call. We're going to do a little bit of pivot here. So if any of you happen to have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll try to answer them in live time. I do have a question for our friends at CSH. So Terry, Kanani, whichever one of you would like to answer, that's totally fine. The question is, what can viewers and the Just Us Coordinating Council do to support the future of permanent supportive housing in a rapidly changing climate?
I think for me, I would just really lift up the importance of what's happening. I mentioned earlier on continuum care notice of funding opportunity. This is a timely advocacy effort. Right now, that new notice has not been introduced because of the government shutdown. They have not been able, the Congress, to be able to pass a continuing resolution, but we anticipate once that is done, whenever that is, that notice of funding opportunity will be released, and it has the potential to impact billions of dollars for supportive housing, rapid rehousing, which will have a direct impact on people who are direct recipients, including providers. So please reach out to us if you want to know more about that. My teammate, who's our policy director and government affairs director, is really the driver of that work at CSH. We're convening folks across the organization. It's like an all hands on deck kind of effort. We're partnering with other national organizations as well. I know they're doing their own things. Forgot all the acronyms, sorry. NAEH is doing work, NLIHC, National Low Income Housing Coalition. There's a lot of groups doing work around this. We've been hosting, Terry and I think, I can't recall who, but we've been doing little meetings with different groups to like get them up to speed on how they can engage on this effort. So if there's a group of folks that want to hear, we could attend that. It would likely be one of my colleagues to do that, but really want to lift up the importance of this moment right now.
Thank you so much for that, Kanani. Terry, did you want to add anything to that?
I think, and specifically for Just Us, since you have a wide berth and collaborative partners, that it may be important to find out what the impact is or might be on the people who are in the field, who are working with continuums of care or working with homeless population, and gather that as the collaborator, as the convener, maybe coordinate what is that impact that they will face in terms of people served or not served, people becoming homeless that are not. So those kinds of real data may be super important.
Thank you for that. And I've got one more burning question. Anyone on the call, feel free to answer. So Danny, our teams, our friends from CSH, housing isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. In fact, partnerships are vital in building an ecosystem where no one falls through the cracks. From your perspective, what does building partnerships with both likely and unlikely allies look like in practice? And how have those collaborations expanded your impact? We've got about a minute or so to answer.
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. So one of the things we have, and I heard it this week, last week when we were in Jersey, was the Housing First models, right? So Housing First is a great option. It's a great resource for folks, but sometimes those can take some time, right? So that's where we've been able to partner with the city of Tucson, and we've kind of taken on some of those folks while they're waiting for their vouchers to kick in. That's been a great model. Another option has been, what we do. I love that video you guys showed where I talked about up in the Bay Area how, renting rooms with other individuals, other families and stuff like that. That was a huge suggestion. So here in Tucson, what we've done is we work with apartment complexes, where they may not take somebody with a criminal background right out of incarceration. So what we've done is we take people for 3 to 6 months, and that's a thing too. We don't have minimum or maximum stays, but if they are successful with us for so many months, then we've been able to work with some of the landlords around town and said, okay, they've done well with us. Would you consider doing a 3-month or a 6-month lease on their own? And then that way we can be able to, expand and show that they're able to do this on their own. Just some outside the box thinking. Again, we just go in and if somebody says no, we just ask that question. Why? What is the uncertainty? Here's a team that we are able to support these folks. So it's not just somebody coming out of prison, it's somebody coming out of prison that has a support system. And here's what they learned while they were incarcerated. So that's what we do, and that's some partnerships we've had.
Thank you so much for that. So I'm looking at the clock and we got to wrap up quickly here, but it has been amazing. First and foremost, I want to thank our amazing speakers. I am confident that we will all continue to work together and, build something that hasn't yet been built or strengthen the current models that are currently in our ecosystem. I want to ask our viewers to please use the QR code. Do we have the QR code on the final slide so that folks can complete the survey? Awesome. That's happening now. If you all can take the time to fill out this survey and let us know your feedback from today. If you haven't done so, also follow us on social media, and please remember to share the opportunity to join the JCC with your circle. This is the final discussion of this year's speaker series. The resources and opportunities for the JCC will continue. Be sure to complete our advocacy survey as well, so you can include your priorities in the next year's speaker series. And if you haven't taken the time to explore the toolkits, don't miss out on the opportunity to implement new methods in your movement. Stay tuned, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great week.